So I've been in real estate for 6 years. I've done close to 500 transactions, and now I own a real estate brand called Collecting Keys that owns a series of other companies, everything from an investment company to an education brand to a bunch of different marketing services for other real estate investors. Throughout that period of time, I've been able to build a decent little portfolio that lets me live the lifestyle that I want. I have a wholesaling business that does a couple $1 million a year. And then I've also helped dozens of other investors build businesses just like mine through the different service companies that we offer. I've gone through a lot in a relatively short period of time. And in this video, I'm going to give you 6 years worth of knowledge that I've accumulated going from being a corporate engineer to a multi-7-figure real estate owner/investor in just a 6-year span. My goal is by watching this single video, you'll be able to learn from all the hard lessons that I went through so that you don't have to learn them quite as harshly as I did. All right, so lesson number 1, you can make millions of dollars in any asset class, and you really need to just pick one and be willing to stick with it for the long haul. In my time running the Collecting Keys podcast, I've met like deca millionaires in pretty much every single asset class you can possibly imagine. Everything from like single family to multifamily to mobile home parks, Airbnb, land flippers, people doing rent by the room, people doing sober living, seriously everything. And when people first discover real estate investing and they listen to BiggerPockets, something like that, what usually happens is they kind of go down this rabbit hole where they are trying to learn about everything all at once. They're reading every kind of book, listening to every podcast, watching every YouTube video, following every influencer, trying to find the thing that is best. And the problem is what normally happens when people do that is they end up wasting a very significant amount of time when really they would have been better off just fully committing to that and going all in on it. I mean, that's easier said than done because honestly, what always happens with pretty much every single person I've met is they start something, it gets a little bit hard. They decide that the thing that they are pursuing, that asset class they are trying to buy is not good, it's saturated, it's overcomplicated, whatever it is, and they are jumping around to something new every single month. And as a result, they can work for half a year, a whole year, many years, and have nothing to show for it at the end. And so the lesson here is to commit to whichever one kind of stands out with you. Go into it with a long-term mindset and just like go into it as heavily as you can. Find a coach, spend money to learn, join communities, things like that. And that's ultimately how you'll build success in any kind of asset. Lesson number 2, you can truly go broke buying great deals, especially if you don't have like a super high income. So here's the thing, real estate costs money, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There is a financial component to doing a real estate transaction that you cannot avoid. Everyone typically starts real estate kind of for the same reason. They want to go and get some kind of passive cash flow or some kind of wealth generation that will allow them to have financial freedom so they can just like hang out on the beach, do whatever, hang out with their kids, live their lifestyle while that passive income comes into their mailbox. While that's all well and good and definitely possible, the problem is that early on, people tend to kind of throttle their growth by buying properties way too early. Like ultimately what happens is you'll have somebody that will make a massive investment, like say $40,000 or $50,000, which is a huge part of the liquidity to get like a couple $100 a month, or maybe even a couple $1,000s a month if they're unbelievably lucky. But the problem is they can't buy another property for a super long period of time. And the thing is, if buying one property puts you years away from buying the next one, then you're going to take decades or longer to be able to get real financial freedom where you're making actual money and not kind of just like rice and beans money, right? And kind of despite what gurus say, things like getting into properties with seller financing with zero down, using other people's money, buying these sub 2 with no money out of pocket, like all that stuff's kind of a myth. And you need to understand that. Like that is a very, very small number of opportunities that even exist. And so you need to focus on making money first. Like a big part of the Collecting Keys podcast, we focus on making massive income before passive income. And the reason for that is because I learned very early on that if you throw all of your money into 1 or 2 properties, you're going to really have to grind to get out of it. And you can completely avoid that from the get-go by just focusing on making money as early on as possible. If you want that to be in real estate, that can come from a number of different things. That can be from wholesaling, from flipping houses, from being a realtor, from being a contractor, right? Doing like some sort of JV business where you are like helping people get deals together or getting a cut of the deals. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but you need to learn how to make like big money, and then the passive income will come significantly faster. Our lesson number 3, Everyone is marketing to and offering on the same deals. So don't let that discourage you and just make as good of an offer as you can and be aggressive with your offers and provide good service. So one of the things that gets thrown around a lot in the real estate business is talking about how markets or different asset classes are saturated. And here's the thing, everyone wants to get wealthy or get rich, right? Everyone that is playing the game of real estate has the exact same goals as you. And so everything is going to be saturated ultimately, right? Like if you have truly discovered some super duper secret that no one else is playing in, honestly, you should probably be a little bit worried because the fact that nobody's playing in it probably means that it isn't that good of an idea. Everyone wants to kind of have like the next big thing, and people will spend hours, weeks, months, even years kind of hunting for that. When really what you need to do is look at what other successful people are doing and just copy them. Like literally just do the exact same thing. Like you're not trying to build Tesla. You don't need to have some incredibly complex IP. There's so many properties out there. There's so much money to be made in each transaction. There's just like such a huge flow of currency in all directions that there is plenty of space for you to carve out enough of a piece for you to be able to reach your goals. You can build an incredible business by just doing exactly what everyone else is doing. So if you want to be competitive in your quote unquote saturated real estate space, make better connections, make better offers, provide better service to your sellers and the people that are helping put your deals together, and money will inevitably come. Part lesson number 4, what is considered a good deal is completely subjective. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked by people either in my scale community or on Instagram or even just like random meetups, like my opinion on a deal. And I kind of hate that question because honestly, my view of a good deal is different from everybody else's view of a good deal. Like the ideal price for a property or the ideal sort of like strategy is going to be different based on everyone's opinions. Everyone has different costs of money. Some people have to go get hard money loans. Some people have a ton of cash, right? It's going to have a different cost of labor. Some people are going to do the work themselves. Some people are going to hire their brother who's going to work for cheap. Some people are going to go and hire a construction company that's going to charge a lot to build things out. Like ultimately, there is an infinite number of variables in analyzing each deal. And those are just like the internal things, right? There's also the external perception that people have. People will like different kinds of neighborhoods for different reasons. People will look at different hard statistics about areas to decide what is worth their time. For me, I don't buy anything that's earlier than 1950s, mostly because I don't like the older homes and I don't like all the additional work that comes with them and kind of the unexpected nature. I know a ton of people, especially in my local town here, that only buy older homes, mostly because those are where like the best neighborhoods are a lot of the time, more established school districts, kind of older money. Honestly, my ideal investment property is like spec neighborhoods where all the houses are the same, things are relatively easy to put together, and I don't have to worry about any surprises with like electric or utilities or anything like that. And so if you look at all that and everyone's experiences, who's technically right when a deal is good or not? The answer is who knows. Literally one of the best deals I ever did. I was unable to wholesale it for a $10,000 fee because nobody liked it. We flipped it and we made 85 grand because we believed in the deal. But again, it is completely subjective of everyone's situation. So ultimately what needs to happen is you need to know your numbers, your investment goals, your liquidity requirements for moving forward and buying more deals. Map those things out and know where you stand. And then it's much easier to know for yourself if a deal is good or not. And you don't have to try and make a decision based off of other people's experiences, which don't reflect your own. Number 5, you need contractors to be fast, cheap, and high quality. That's kind of impossible. You can really only have 2 of those things. And if you do happen to find a good contractor, you need to understand that they will have a limited shelf life for your business. This is always one of the hardest ones for people to learn because when it does come around, usually they get bit pretty bad, right? Because contractors in general are kind of like a funny breed of people. The barrier to entry to become a licensed contractor is kind of easy. You just go file some paperwork and get your license. And people that sort of go into that line of business notoriously are not the best at things like marketing, systems, communications, general finance. And as a result, they're typically kind of hard to find and they're even harder to work with, especially ones that are willing to work for real estate investors. I mean, there are ones that kind of have their stuff figured out, but those guys aren't going to work for you. Those people are going and installing full kitchens for $20,000 when you're trying to get them to spend $20,000 to do an entire house. And so it takes an already limited quantity and makes it even harder to find because you need a special breed of an already special breed. Okay. And as a result, you kind of always need to be recruiting because once you kind of find like an awesome contractor and they're working for you and they've done a couple deals for you, so suddenly they can get booked by other investors as they kind of get ambitious and try to do more deals. They realize they can go and make way more money doing work that's probably a little bit easier, not working for you. They can just disappear off the face of the earth because they have some kind of personal or substance abuse problems. They want to move away, or they just don't want to do their job anymore because they're older and it's breaking their joints down. If that happens when you're in mid-project or you have a project that's kind of tight, you can be in big trouble all of a sudden if you have no backup plan. And so when you find a good contractor, hold them super close, treat them well, pay them on time. Do not share their information unless it's with, really, really good reason. And understand that you will only have them for a limited period of time. So work with them as much as you possibly can when you have that period. And that's okay. You'll just have to make sure that you're always hunting for the next one. All right, lesson number 6, private investors or quote unquote other people's money is also a debt that needs to be paid off. People kind of treat it like free money and it's not. So this message is kind of like old as time at this point when it comes to real estate. I mean, if you go back to like those old VHS tapes that people used to order, you can hear people talking about how to use other people's money to flip houses and make money. But the problem is it's unethical, and the way that people approach it is not inherently correct, right? I kind of like hate this sort of trope around other people's money, because the problem is that like legit people that like know what they're doing, they kind of know that it's not that simple and it's kind of BS. And so ultimately who ends up getting drawn to it is people that don't have any money, right? And they potentially don't understand the consequences of borrowing money from other people, or they don't understand that they can lose. Like people kind of go into it and they convince their friend or their dad or their grandma or their neighbor or some poor guy that they meet at a real estate meetup to go and, take a loan against their 401k or take out a HELOC or give them all of their savings to go and like do this project together. But they don't know what they're doing. And then the investor is also ignorant. And that's kind of just a recipe for disaster. And so full disclosure, I got started doing this. Like when I started flipping houses, I met a couple at a local real estate meetup and they paid for the house and I brought all the hustle and we made a little bit of money on the first couple of houses. But the thing is, when you go down this route, you need to understand that things can go wrong. And you need to be in a position where you're going to treat their money like a bank and you are going to be willing to pay them off, even if that means you're having to sell your own house, your own assets, pull out all of your own liquidity to be able to do it. Because if they trust you to do a deal and you fail and you lose somebody else's money without good reason or with any sort of negligence, it's not only an ethical problem, but you are going to have your reputation absolutely destroyed and you will be out of business before you even started. Using other people's money is definitely a thing that you should explore as you grow. When you're early on, be super, super cautious, understand the risks, and don't treat it like it's not bank money just because it's a friend of a friend who is willingly trusting you with a large investment of their own. All right, item number 7, anyone who actively brags about vanity metrics such as assets under management, door count, quote unquote cash flow, doesn't know what they're talking about, and you should take everything they say with a grain of salt. The real estate people tend to have egos. Like I would say that kind of exists with all business owners and entrepreneurs, but real estate people in particular tend to have very large egos. My kind of hypothesis with this is it's because it's not an overly complex business. And so people that figure it out, when they're looking around at everyone else that hasn't, they tend to feel like they're the coolest guy out there, right? The problem is that like, honestly, a lot of the people with the biggest egos are kind of full of it. And so when you start getting involved in the community, you will hear certain things that people very, very proudly proclaim about their own success in their own business. The vast majority of it is complete nonsense and doesn't actually mean anything. As an example, let's say someone that comes in and they start talking very proudly how they have 100 million assets under management. You can probably go click at any random real estate profile on Instagram and you will see something that says like X whatever M AUM, right? Million assets under management. But that doesn't give you the full story. That doesn't tell you how much they actually own of that. Like they literally could have a syndication and own a teeny tiny piece of it and they're not actually worth anything, but they were like a 1% limited partner for a much larger company that owns all these properties, right? Or just helped raise the money for all these properties. Same thing kind of goes with door count. This is one that really drives me crazy. I feel like this is very common with people that kind of failed at residential and try to get into like multifamily stuff is you'll see them say things like, "Oh, this is how I bought 500 doors last year." And then you kind of dive into them a little bit, and it turns out that they put like $50,000 into a syndication. And now I guess they technically do own 500 doors, but not actually. Like they own like less than 0.1% of it. But hey, they're going to put that out on Instagram and try to sell you some course around private investing anyway. And then when it comes to cash flow, this is always my personal favorite one. Because honestly, like these people I would say like less like malicious or less like egotistical. And a lot of them are honestly just ignorant. Like when you see a lot of people that are kind of getting into the cash flow bragging, it'll be a situation of like a property rents for $2,000, their mortgage is $1,000, and they're like, boom, I have $1,000 in cash flow. But of course, that doesn't account for any sort of capital expenses, sort of maintenance, any sort of vacancy in the property, any sort of like increases in taxes or insurance. And so realistically, all said and done, they maybe have like $200 in real cash flow, but you can't tell them that because they haven't learned their hard lessons yet. And so if you're meeting people and you're trying to figure out if they're legit or not, the things that actual successful people will talk about will typically be their cost per deal, or their like, their transactional rate, how many deals they're doing on a monthly basis. They will talk about their revenue and their net profit of their business. They'll talk about the kinds of returns that they get for their investors. They're not going to talk about these little vanity metrics. This make them sound super, super cool. They're going to be talking about a lot more kind of like boring business metrics, because honestly, that is what success actually looks like as a business owner. And it's important to know this so that when you are networking with people, you're trying to figure out who to do deals with, who to trust, who to listen to. You can pick up the BS a little bit earlier on so that you're not getting dragged down the road just to find out that someone isn't living up to the expectations they said they were. Item number 8, wholesaling real estate is one of the fastest real estate businesses where a 1 or 2 person operation can make 7 figures per year without debt and only relying on pure hustle. I know I said in the first one that, you have to just pick something and go into it and you can make millions in every asset class. That's totally true. But if you compound that with kind of like the second point I had about making massive income, right? Wholesaling, in my opinion, is one of the easiest ways to do that as a newbie and with a small business. And sorry, let me rephrase that. It's not one of the easiest. It's one of the simplest. I could go back in time. I would have started wholesaling sooner, just kind of like build my bank account. Like it's, I said, it's not an easy business. It's a simple business. There are no doubt like other ways you can make like more money. Like if you go and, you flipping houses, you're on average going to make more money than doing wholesale. If you're doing like a multifamily, like repositioning where you're adding like a couple $1,000,000 of value to a multifamily deal, you're going to make more money doing that. If you're doing like these land entitlements, subplats, you'll definitely make more money doing that. The problem is those take like insane amounts of time and there's no guarantee. The thing is with wholesaling is once you kind of get it up and running, you can legitimately make like an average annual US salary in like 3 to 4 weeks, like just on like a rolling basis. Once your leads are kind of built out, you have your sales process you're running, you're closing deals on a regular basis. It's not uncommon for people to be cashing $40, $50, $60, $70,000 checks every single month. And I'm literally not exaggerating with that, right? Because this rate at which these deals move is so fast, and the only money that you are having to come out of pocket is typically going to be your marketing expenses and any sort of like systems that you're running, a CRM, those sort of things. For us, our average cost per deal with our wholesale company is about $4,000. Our average return, our ad spend is about 7 times that. Okay. So that means that for every $1,000 that we put into our marketing system, we expect to get about $7,000 back. So everyone says, well, why don't you just keep doing that and scale more and more? Well, that's what we do. Like literally, that is the core of our business. We have scaled that up to a point where we kind of reaching like staff limitations, just the number of deals that are coming through. And to grow it, we'd have to build up more staff, more complex systems, expand into other markets. And we did that up to a point, and we've kind of reached an area where we're happy. We're just letting things roll for right now. And we just continue to make money like that every single month, year after year. And again, like I said, it's not an easy business, but it's a simple business. It's very easy to replicate. This is like literally why I started the Scale community, because I got so infatuated with the rate at which people can achieve life-changing income and start generating life-changing wealth. Because here's the other thing too, right? Let's say you want to do long-term wealth generation and buy a portfolio. If you have the wholesale process dialed in, you can buy properties at even better discount. You can buy them a lot faster because you're generating massive income at the same time. It is literally possible for someone to go from nobody to worth $1 million plus in less than a year and be making multiple X's of their previous income. And no, I'm not exaggerating about that. It's a lot of work. It's a very, very sort of like, I would say, grindy thing to build out, especially early on, but it is repeatable. And if I had known that when I started doing real estate in 2018 and I hadn't waited until mid 2020 to kind of get into that, my entire financial position would be completely different now because I would have an extra 2.5 years of generating that kind of revenue. So if you want to go faster, you're willing to commit full time, I would highly recommend that you consider wholesaling as part of your journey because you will be able to turn things on very, very quickly if you work hard enough and you get a little bit lucky. Item number 9, gurus get a lot of hate, but there are some good ones out there. You just have to know how to find them. Health, wealth, and love are kind of like the greatest marketing tactics that people use to sell like any product, right? You kind of take that concept of marketing and you combine it with the major wealth opportunities that exist with real estate. And of course, what that means is you have a ton of gurus out there that are pitching you on financial freedom or easy money or all sort of other stuff. And of course, that's generally not how it works. And I guess technically I am a guru now as well because I do have content. I have a podcast, I make these videos, and I do have a community and mastermind. But the thing is, like, what makes good gurus different from everyone else are the gurus that are actually like operators as well as part of their community. And they're not just like professional content creators and marketers. The real estate community is super fast paced. There's an insane amount of money and people that go into real estate in every facet, right? And if you have a guru or a coach who stops operating and purely just becomes kind of like the person that runs their community or the professional podcaster or the professional YouTuber or whatever, they're going to get out of touch very, very quickly. And so if you're trying to kind of figure out like a guru to follow or like influencers to follow, look for people that have active businesses, that talk about them openly, that test and share things that they are working on in their business and trying to improve. Because if they don't do that, very, very quickly, they are going to be completely outdated and the texts they kind of preach are going to no longer be valid. And at that point, they're going to continue trying to sell you because that's how they make their money, but you're not going to get nearly as much value as you could if you follow someone that's actually playing the game. And lastly, item number 10, and this is the most important one if you ask me. This is a kind of philosophical concept. For most of us, real estate isn't the thing. It's just the thing that's going to get us to the thing. And this is a quote from Aaron Amuchastegui, who I consider one of my mentors. And if you don't know who that is, you can go look him up. He was actually on Collecting Keys podcast, episode 135, if you want to check that out. But he is one of the highest caliber real estate entrepreneurs that I've met. He's one of my mentors, and I went to a meetup of his last fall, and he opened it with this line that real estate isn't the thing. Real estate is the thing to get us to the thing. Okay. And it's something that I've sort of like pondered periodically since then, and I've repeated several times because I think it's a really good reminder that the value of real estate isn't like to just like build this massive portfolio and be kind of like a real estate hoarding monster. Okay. It is the fact that it is such a simple business that is easily repeatable that can get you to the lifestyle that you want. And I think this is a really important message to kind of understand, because when you're building out your real estate business, you're kind of getting in the weeds, you're talking to sellers, you're getting rejected, you're having close calls on deals. It can get very, very grindy very quickly. Okay. And it can get super easy to get burned out, try to change directions, try to do these different things. And so if you can get beyond having goals that are just business related or just portfolio related and focus instead on like, what is my lifestyle going to look like? What about these random Tuesdays that I can take off to go hang out with my kids? What about these trips that I'm able to go on because I've built this much wealth over the past couple of years? If you focus on those things and what real estate has gotten you to, it is much easier to take a step back and just keep moving on and continuing to do your business. Okay. Especially with real estate, because like the transaction time of stuff is kind of slow. Very, very rarely does stuff happen that has like an immediate upward or downward effect. And so focusing on that end result and the fact that real estate is what's gotten you there makes it easier to continue to refine your craft, continue to ride your path, right? And move things forward. And then, avoid any of the, lady in the red dress or like the squirrel syndrome or shiny object syndrome, whatever you want to call it when things start to get a little bit tough. Anyways, guys, if you found this valuable, please share it with somebody else. Subscribe to my podcast, Collecting Keys. Check out my YouTube channel and subscribe to that there. If you're watching it on the channel, you should follow me on Instagram at Mike_invest if you want to see some more short form stuff. Aside from that, I really appreciate you guys listening, and make sure you follow along as we continue to help people get to 7 figures and beyond. Thanks, everyone.